Ever get in those like little standoffs? When you and your partner are trying to decide where to eat, or maybe it's about like how often you should call the in-laws.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, those little power struggles can sneak up. So today, get ready, because we are diving deep into count 'em, 5 research-backed tips to help you navigate those tricky relationship power dynamics.
I'm ready.
And let me tell you, the research we've been poring over, packed with actionable advice, and the big takeaway, collaboration, folks. Collaboration is key.
I love it.
It's like everyone wins when you work together,
Right.
which is why I'm so thrilled to have our expert here today. They've gone through mountains of research on this relationship psychology, conflict resolution, you name it, they've got it covered. So are you ready to jump in?
Let's do this.
All right. First up on the docket, recognizing there's even a power struggle in the first place. Why is that so important?
It's funny. It's actually kind of like if you were trying to solve a puzzle, but you didn't realize some of the pieces were missing.
I like that.
Yeah, because until you really acknowledge that imbalance, that like who tends to call the shots in certain areas, you can't really get to the root of the problem, can you?
Right, like you're working with incomplete information.
Exactly. And there's even research to back this up. A 2010 study published in the Journal of Marriage and Family found that couples who could openly acknowledge and discuss, these power dynamics, they actually reported way higher levels of relationship satisfaction.
Which makes sense, right? Because you're not avoiding the issue.
Exactly.
And it's not always like a huge blowout fight either.
Oh, absolutely not.
It could be as simple as like, who always controls the remote?
Oh, yeah.
Or, who seems to always decide what's for dinner?
Totally.
Okay, so once we like see that power struggle, what do we do? How do we actually tackle it?
Well, that brings us to tip number 2, compromise. And this is so key. This isn't about one person caving in and just giving up. It's about finding a solution that actually works for both partners.
Right, and this is where I think it gets really fascinating. There's a study from UCLA that found that, get this, couples who saw compromise as a form of respect, like a way of showing you respect your partner and you
Yes.
value collaborating with them, they were actually more likely to stay together for the long haul.
Wow.
It's about shifting that mindset, isn't it?
It really is. And that perfectly sets up our next tip. Teamwork. It's about moving from that me versus you mentality to an us versus the problem approach.
And isn't that the truth? It's not a competition.
Right.
Think about like a basketball team or something,
Yeah.
You can have your star player, but if they're not passing the ball, if they're not working together with the team,
Yeah.
you're not going to win a championship. In relationships, they're kind of the same way, aren't they?
That is a perfect analogy.
But let's be real. Disagreements.
Yeah.
They're going to happen, right? So how do we keep those disagreements from turning into like huge blowouts when emotions are running high?
Okay, so this is where tip number 4 comes in. We've got to ditch the blame game. And there's this really helpful communication framework called nonviolent communication. And it can work wonders here. So instead of saying something like, you always make us late, try shifting it to, I feel anxious when we're running behind schedule. You're expressing how you feel without putting the other person on the defensive.
Ooh, I love that because you're owning your emotions
Exactly.
without pointing fingers.
Yes. And this actually loops back beautifully to recognizing those power dynamics we talked about earlier. You see, because when we blame, we often end up, even if we don't mean to, reinforcing those existing imbalances. Which takes us to our final and maybe most important tip, taking turns being the leader.
So it's not just about like splitting chores down the middle, but actually taking turns making the decisions in different areas, right?
Yes, exactly. So maybe you switch off every month on who manages the bills, or perhaps you alternate who gets to plan the weekend activities. It's a very practical way to make sure both partners feel heard and respected.
I love it. This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. We've gone from recognizing those like super subtle power struggles to actually having some really tangible tools to create a more balanced and healthy relationship.
Absolutely. And as you reflect on everything we've talked about today, here's a little something to consider. Which of these tips really resonated with you? And how can you take these principles and apply them not just to your romantic relationships, but to your friendships, your family dynamics, even in the workplace? Because honestly, we're all navigating these power dynamics every single day.
That's a good point. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. As always, thanks for joining us.